Well, thank you everybody for coming. I know we're still waiting on a few people, but they can join in at any point. Um, I appreciate you joining us. I'm Patty Ragsdale. For those who don't know me, I'm the founder of Botanical Belonging, and I'm here to present or start the presentation about our field forays that we're going to do at a place called Stable M that's just down the street from us. We're going to use iNaturalist to catalog the botanical diversity that we find at this beautiful property. So a couple of housekeeping notes. We are in a Zoom meeting room, but everyone's muted now and their videos turned off so that we can record this session for people who might want to join the forays in the future. And that way they'll have all this information when they start, just like you. So at the end, we'll stop in a couple of places where people will have an opportunity to ask questions whenever we feel like that's necessary. But if you have anything while we're speaking that you'd like to ask us, please put that in the chat. And if Anna will take notes for me, and I will take notes for Anna when she's doing the next part. Okay, well, let's get going. So a quick introduction just about us. For those who don't know what Botanical Belonging is or what we do at Botanical Belonging, we are a nonprofit that reconnects our community to our local native plants and ecology through hands-on learning, like these field forays that are really just kind of field botany done with the help of an app called iNaturalist. So we're going to visit a private property down the street and just really learn what these plants look like in their native environment. I'm Patty Ragsdale, and I have been growing native plants since about 2016 at a place called Happy Apples Farm. In 2022, we founded Botanical Belonging as a nonprofit that was really focused on just engaging everybody in learning about the native plants around us. So I'm the founder of that organization, but Anna Funk, who is also on this call and will present to you later, she's the president of our board of directors, and she's been with us since the beginning. I really appreciate her being here to present tonight. She brings a lot of knowledge and background to what we do. She can tell you a little bit more about herself when she starts her session as soon as I'm finished. So I said I've been growing since 2016, but I actually studied wildlife management in college, and that's where I really fell in love with field botany and learned a whole bunch about plant taxonomy, which I really found that I couldn't stop doing. I just kept doing it anyway. So for over 30 years now, I've been putting native plants in gardens. In 2019, I was invited to join the board of directors of the Kansas Native Plant Society, and that really opened up a huge world for me, getting to know botanists from around the state who, unlike what a lot of people think, botanists aren't necessarily people who are trained in botany. They are people who, like me, just really love native plants and really love discovering what the plants are that are growing around them. So tonight I'm going to share a little bit of history and some other information about the land that we're going to be touring throughout this season called Stable M. And then Anna, who will follow me, is going to share some details about iNaturalist and the project that we've created on iNaturalist for everybody to help us upload observations about the plants we find on this land. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you have wondered, why is this place called Stable M? Well, that's the name that Julie Murphy, who owns this land, gave it many, many years ago when she and her husband purchased the property. She's lived there for well over 40 years. I'm not exactly sure the date when they purchased the land. Most of that time she has lived there by herself since her husband passed away shortly after they had the land. She cares for 6 horses that live there with her, And honestly, the trails that are mowed throughout the forests were both for her husband and for herself. She's a horsewoman, but he actually rode four-wheelers. There's no evidence whatsoever that the four-wheelers or dirt bikes have left any damage in those trails that are in the forest. But it's interesting how they melded their two interests with this piece of property. And it's quite extensive, 73 acres, with all kinds of different habitats in there that we'll be able to get to know. The picture at the top is of a few of her horses in one of the pastures there. And below that is me walking a group last spring through the giant pawpaw grove that is in the floodplain forest below the dam. Because this place actually has a huge lake on it also. So you'll see a picture of that. Here, an aerial photography that kind of tells you where Stable M is. So in relation to Botanical Belonging, which is at the top center of this aerial photograph, it's less than a half mile down the road. So where 178th Street travels south, it ends at Kansas Avenue at a corner right there. And the driveway for Stable M comes off at a diagonal from that corner. There's a second driveway there that can sometimes be confusing, but just keep thinking you cannot see her house from her driveway, the entrance to her driveway. So you just kind of look like you're taking a trail off into the woods, basically, but that's her driveway. So her house is quite a ways back, and that's where she is. And you can see on this map, that yellow border, that is the extent of the property. So that's the 73 acres that we will have access to for these field forays. And let's see, you can see the large lake that's at the bottom of this image. So it's pretty much in the center, but kind of along the south edge of the property. And it covers 10 acres. The address is 17215 178th Street. I will send that out with the registrations for the actual field forays. We will have those set up. That's on my schedule for tomorrow to set those up. And anyone can sign up at any point to participate in those. And they are on, I think we decided the second Thursday of every month in the evening. April through October, I think is what we had scheduled. So you'll see those pop up on the website, and we'll send out an email about that as soon as they're ready. So a little bit of a tour around the property and what some of the features are that we'll get to see. The first thing that we're going to probably walk through is kind of a degraded prairie. It's actually kind of a beat up pasture, but there's a very large hoop barn that we likely will walk through to get to one of the my favorite places, which is that floodplain forest. And that hoop barn kind of opens up out onto a prairie where, even though it's degraded and has a history of grazing for dairy cows and horses, and it's been overseeded like most of the grasslands here with cool season grasses, there are still prairie species that pop up in there. And there's also Sericea lespedeza, a lot of the common noxious weeds that we will see in all over around here. She doesn't really have a lot of Johnson grass though, which is really good, nor does she have an abundance of bush honeysuckle. So there's a large utility easement that also kind of makes a corner right on her property and goes through this pasture. And my feeling is that that has really helped keep any tree encroachment out of this space and kept it very open. Sorry, my dog is still here in the background with me. The plant you see here on the left is Liatris aspera, or rough blazing star. So that's just representative of some of the things you see out in this pasture. in the summer if she hasn't mowed. It can be really, really beautiful. Okay. When we walk out of that hoop barn going to the west, we actually are headed right for the dam that goes along the west edge of the lake. And below the dam, and off kind of to the right, when you get into the woods, are all those paths that go down through the floodplain forest. The lake itself is about 10 acres, and it was built sometime between 1966 and 1976. I know that because I went through the historical aerial photography that you can find on Leavenworth County's county website, that you can look back at all of that information. And so you can see that between those two dates, this big lake appeared. And there are quite a lot of interesting things that have happened since this lake was built on the land around the lake. The floodplain forest, though, is mostly a northwest facing hillside, and then the bottom land that's below the dam and the stream that the dam spillway kind of goes into. So spring is already underway in the forest down there. I went yesterday and took a few pictures to show you. Oh yeah, I should mention the top picture here. That's a cloudy day in July down in that floodplain forest. It is quite dark. You can hardly see where to put your feet, although it's super pretty and always pretty nice and cool down in there. Beautiful place to be. These were pictures I just took yesterday when I was walking around. There's the smooth black haw, which is Viburnum prunifolium, a trout lily, which could be the prairie species, or more likely it's just the regular one that we usually see, but all of the bottomland is covered with that, plus a little fern, which is some kind of cystopteris, that is a rhizomatous fern that covers the ground all under your feet. Dutchman's breeches are just starting to bloom in there. They are really all over the place. Lots of other species that we'll get to see when we're in there. So that's the floodplain forest. The other forested area that she has is a mixed oak hickory woodland. It's kind of along the north edge of the lake and the east edge of her property. So we can walk through that pasture to access the trails there, or we can walk down to the lake and go the other direction. But it's a really interesting place because we think that it may have been way more open in the past. So the understory in this area has some really a very, very diverse mix of species. It has some evidence that it was formerly a grazed area based on what we see growing there. The trees, even though they're very mature, we think it's kind of a younger forest, and I can show you why I think that. It's a very gentle south-facing slope, goes down into the lake, as I said, on the north edge. There's black oak there, which is an indication of a sandstone bedrock. And then beneath the sandstone, there's a limestone layer, and wherever that is exposed, we see a change in the trees to chinkapin oak and post oak. Really quite a lot of things to see in that space. And here is just some information about where that place is. This is aerial imagery from 1941, and you can see there's no lake there. And then if we look forward, there's where the lake is, and you can see that there are more trees, a different mix in that space. I'll go back so you can kind of compare right there. But right in the space where that tip of the lake is, I found Michigan lily growing in there, which is typical, that you would find it on the edge of a woodland like that, but it will never bloom. It's just a big vegetative colony because it doesn't have the light that it used to have. But it's a huge colony that's down in there. Again, just some indication that there used to be more sunlight in this area than there is right now. Here are some of the species that I photographed in that area. Of course, this gigantic, I don't know why Jack in the Pulpit got this big in this space, because it's drier than what you see in the floodplain forest. But this was a huge Jack in the Pulpit, and it was in fruit, but the fruit wasn't ripe yet. Usually we don't find any fruit on them because there's so many deer in there. But this one was in that upland forest. And then we have lots of Monarda fistulosa growing. And then the white flowers in here, I'm not sure they're that one, but in amongst this area was also Silene stellata, it's called starry campion. This was the first place I'd ever actually seen that growing in the wild. So that was kind of fun to find it in there. And violet bush clover, which is a Lespedeza, that's a good one, growing in around that. And then the bottom picture on the right is a pussy toes that I'd never seen before. This is Parlin's pussy toes, or Antonaria parlinii. So that was also growing in that space. So lots of fun things here, and I'm excited to be able to show those to you. And hopefully during our forays, we will get the chance to meet Julie Murphy, who I'm very, very glad has invited us to explore. I've been exploring this place for almost 10 years now, and I just love it, and so glad that she's open to having other people come and help us document what we're seeing here. And now I'm going to turn it over to Anna so that she can tell you about iNaturalist. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Anna, and it'll be all up to you.
Okay, I will start sharing my screen. Okay, do you see iNaturalist?
I see it.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I will pick up right where Patty left off, but first I'll tell you a little bit more about who I am. I'm sure you all know Patty, but you might not know me. So like Patty said, I'm the president of the board of directors for Botanical Belonging. And I am a writer and science communicator by day. In my past life, I was an ecologist, but figured out I liked talking about science and nature more than I liked actually being a researcher. Um, so don't let that PhD in plant ecology fool you. Patty is the expert here, but I am still a native plant aficionado and I love iNaturalist. So I'm excited to tell you all about it. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to walk you through how to join the Stable M project on iNaturalist. So I guess the first thing you'll really have to do is make sure to download the iNaturalist app to your phone. No matter what kind of phone you have, it'll be available in the App Store to download for free. And then it will prompt you to make a new account if you don't have one already. But that all is pretty straightforward. I trust you all to do that part. So to find the Stable M project, I'm sure we could have done it a more official way, but I found that if I just typed Stable M into the search bar, that our project does come up. So you can go ahead and search for it, click on Stable M Botanical Survey, and then that will bring up this page that we were just looking at. So once you're logged in and looking at this page, and this works either in the app on your phone or you can just do it on iNaturalist.org on your computer. To join the project, you just click the join button that I drew this red box around on the right here. That brings you to this page. It just says, are you sure you want to join? It tells you the project description again. The curator is Patty, our favorite garden rambler. And then there's some rules for adding observations, but these are just sort of the basic iNaturalist rules, I think. The other neat thing is that your observations are going to automatically populate in the project. just because you had an observation within the borders of stable M, you don't actually have to submit each individual observation to the project. So that's a new thing that iNaturalist is doing, that will make our project a little easier. But anyway, you can check this box whether you want to receive updates from the project. This means two things. One is it'll send you notifications on your dashboard. So that just means when you go to iNaturalist.org or you open up your iNaturalist app on your phone, it might tell you, like, here's the latest from the Stable M project. The other update they'll send you, it says the daily updates email. I'm not actually sure what that's about. I'm going to take the risk and join with the box checked with daily updates, and you can always unsubscribe if they seriously start emailing you every day and you don't want that. So I say, yes, I want to join. Now we're in, we're ready to go. So let's talk about how to take good photos for iNaturalist. So taking pictures specifically to use iNaturalist to identify plants is definitely a science and not an art. The pictures do not need to look pretty. They don't need to have good composition, but they do need to show the defining characteristics of a plant. But if you don't know what the plant is, you don't know what the defining characteristics of the plant are. So there are a couple tips that can keep you sort of in the right ballpark. The general idea is to take pictures from multiple angles and multiple zooms. There's probably a better word for that. In order to gather as much information as possible. And you're definitely going to want to get up close and personal with these plants. So an example here, just from my yard, like we can tell that these daffodils are daffodils from all the way across the yard. But most of the plants we're going to see at Stable M are going to require a lot more specific information to identify them. You would not want to submit this photo to iNaturalist and be done. So here's an example from my yard. This was just the closest plant to me while I was thinking of an example for this presentation. So we have some nice henbit. So here was the first picture I took. You can't see very detailed like what the leaves or the flowers look like, but this is actually a good picture to take because it shows sort of the structure of the plant. You can see that it is low to the ground. You can see it's growing among these rocks on this garden edge. It kind of looks like a ground cover. It's short. So you actually do get some information from this picture. Now I'll zoom in a little more. So a picture like this, now we can start to see the shapes of the leaves. Now we can see the shapes of the flowers. We can see some of the color a little better, but I'm not even going to stop there. So I'm poking around this plant trying to figure out what it is, and I notice it has a square stem. So that seems weird. So I'm going to make sure I snap a photo that shows the square stem. This one's also a good photo because we're showing a different angle of the leaves. It shows sort of underneath the leaf, not just the above shot. Some other angles we could get for this plant is a close-up of the flowers and the bracts. Sometimes plants will have different hairiness up by the flowers than they do lower down on the stems. And the last picture, I really wanted to get one face on the flower. I wanted to really like look down the throat of the little corona. So I think this is a good collection now. We've got 5 photos. It might seem like overkill, especially if you all are already plant people. You're like, I know what this is. But this gives you the idea, especially if you did not know what this is, then you don't know, like maybe there's only one thing that looks even remotely like this, so it seems like overkill to take all these pictures. But maybe it turns out there's 6 species and they're all very, very, very similar. So it's a good thing you took picture number 3 that has some crazy little defining characteristic. So just some things to keep an eye out for as you're looking at a plant. Things you might want to make sure are documented in your picture. Anywhere that there's hairs or not, especially on the leaves and stems. Also, the bracts can be helpful. The bracts are leafy bits that are behind a flower. So if you picture a sunflower, how there's like the yellow petals, but then behind it there's the green, almost look like petals, but they're leafy. Those are bracts. Those can be really good places to look for defining characteristics on some plants. Other places to take a peek at: leaf undersides. Maybe the underside of a leaf is a different texture than the top. That would be something good to notice. Maybe the pattern of the leaf veins is interesting. Like I said, stem shaped bracts. Some plants might have axillary leaves. That's where the leaf meets the stem. Sometimes there's like little other leaves sticking out of that spot. Those are axillary leaves. Just anything that could possibly be important for distinguishing one plant from another. And again, the pictures do not have to be pretty at all, but they do have to be in focus. So I would encourage you, as you're snapping away, do sort of check and make sure at least some of your photos are clear. Because you'll be really mad if you get home and all your pictures are blurry and they're not great for iNaturalist. So now that we have our first observation of this mystery plant from the yard, here's how to upload to iNaturalist. So when I open my app, it looks like this. I have a few observations from my life. If yours is blank, that's totally fine if you're new to iNaturalist. But to get started, we're going to click this green plus sign on the bottom, add a new observation. This little menu comes up and we will choose image. I'll also point out here, so you can take photos inside the iNaturalist app, but it's like the software for it isn't as good as your phone camera, especially if you have a newer phone, but even if you don't. So I almost never take photos inside iNaturalist. I always take photos with my camera and then click on this choose image option. My phone is a Google phone, so it opens up this other menu. Your phone might look a little different at this stage, but I'm going to go ahead and pick files. And now it will show me my pictures that I recently took. So this is just like a silly little fun thing that I do, but the first photo that you pick in your batch of photos is the one that's going to show up as like the cover photo on your observation. So I always make sure that I click on the prettiest one first. That's just for fun. That doesn't have any scientific bearing. So once we've picked our first photo, we can go ahead and just click on all the others that go with the same observation. So one note here is you want to make sure all the photos that you're submitting for your observation are from the same individual plant, not just the same species, because there's a lot of reasons this can go wrong, but that's just how our iNaturalist works. You're taking pictures from multiple angles of the same plant. Even if there's two plants that are right next to each other, even if you're pretty sure they're the same species, like don't ever combine different plants, different individual plants into the same observation. Once we've selected our pictures, they'll appear here on the top. You can click on the camera button if you want to add some more. And now is the fun part. Now we get to use iNaturalist to help us identify this species. So I click on what did you see, view suggestions. So at this point, if you already know what plant you have, you can just type it in and find it. Or chances are iNaturalist will have given it to you as one of the choices and you can just hit yes. But we're going to pretend that we have no idea what this is. So we are going to use iNaturalist's awesome capabilities to identify this plant. So iNaturalist is pretty sure, just from my pictures, that this plant is in the genus Lamium. Dead nettles, it is correct on that. And there are two suggestions. There's two lamiums that are both visually similar and are expected nearby. So iNaturalist knows our location. It knows what plants make sense here. It's not going to suggest some crazy thing from African rainforest that we would never see. And it's doing cool image searches to compare the pictures. So what I want to do is click on these arrows, which is going to allow us to compare this species with the photos we took to see if we think it's a match. So when we click on those arrows, this is what comes up. The top is my picture that I took, and the bottom is pictures from the iNaturalist database, pictures that are confirmed as Lamium and Plexicoli. So if we swipe left and right, it's going to show us more pictures from the database. If we swipe left and right on the top, it'll scroll through our pictures that we submitted. So it's really cool. You can sort of look at all the angles of our pictures, look at all the angles of their pictures, and see if you have a match. And if you want to look at the other species, if we want to look at Lamium purpureum, then we would click this green arrow on the bottom. But I think this is a good match, so we're going to go back and say, yes, this is Lamium and Plexicoli, and then that'll thank you, iNaturalist, for the ID. So we're almost ready to submit. We're going to just fill out the rest of our observation. If you have any notes for any reason at all, you can put some notes in. You're going to want to make sure your time and location are correct, especially if you take photos at the site, but then later upload them to iNaturalist. You don't necessarily have to do this like while you're standing in the woods. You can do it later on your computer or on your phone, but when you're at home. But we do want to make sure that the time and location are correct for when and where you actually took the observation. Location visibility is something you can use if you want to keep the location of something private. I'm pretty sure for this project, we can keep it open. We can ask Patty about that in a second. But you will want to use location visibility obscured if you find something that's of conservation concern. Like, let's say you found a super rare orchid that someone might come and try and poach, or you found a patch of wild ramps and you think illegal harvesters might come in and take them all. Something like that, if you wanted to protect the location. I also recommend obscuring location if you start using iNaturalist a lot in your backyard, for example. Like if you have 1,000 observations all in one spot, like people know that that's your backyard. So I would recommend obscuring your backyard, things like that. The last thing is it captive or cultivated? So that one's really important to check the box if you are submitting an observation of something that's planted in a garden or it's like a crop species, anything like that, just because it is really important to separate that out from the data that lives in iNaturalist about like the wild natural range of various species. And like I said before, you don't have to click add to project to submit this to Stable M. If your location is in the right spot and is within Stable M, then it will automatically add to Stable M. So next I want to show you how we can scope out what we've learned about Stable M so far. So we are going to go back to the website version, and I'm actually going to pull this up in real time so we can look at Stable M. So we're just getting started. We haven't gone on any of our field trips yet, but there are 7 observations. Thanks, Patty, for submitting some of your observations to iNaturalist. We can see there are 6 species so far that have been recorded. There are 7 identifiers. So identifiers are going to be strangers on iNaturalist who are just plant experts and who have looked at our 7 observations and said, yes, that is whatever species you said it was. And there's 4 observers. So it's not just Patty so far that has submitted observations from Stable M. 3 other people have also done it. And we can click on any of these if we want to learn more. We can look at the stats, which is going to be really fun as we start to log more and more species. 7 so far. Right now we have 1 insect species, and the other 5 are plants. So all of this is going to be really fun. Back to the overview, we can look at the map of all of our observations over time. So we'll start to get more and more of these little dots as we log more and more observations. You can click on one to see what it is. It's just so fun. iNaturalist is so fun. Something else you can do once we start to get a lot of observations is you could sort of study up before we go to the site. Like if you want to see what other people have recorded, you could be like, oh, Patty saw a Jack in the pulpit. I want to make sure I remember what Jack in the pulpit looks like before I go there. So I can come look at Patty's picture, but I can also go down here and click on Jack in the pulpit. And that will take me to the species page for all the Jack in the pulpits. So now I can scroll through everybody's pictures. And we can go see the map. We can see the whole Jack in the pulpit range. This is really cool. Anyway, you can poke around forever and learn so much from iNaturalist. Oh, something else I want to show you is how to search for species. I will go back to the internet. So I actually want to show you pawpaw because I was totally unrelated to Patty saying there's a cool grove of pawpaws. I was talking about pawpaws with a friend this morning, as you do, and he reminded me that I can find pawpaws. So I've never eaten a pawpaw, and it is on my bucket list. Um, and my friend was like, "Well, just go find some. They're right by you. You know how to find the map." And I do know how to find the map. It's right here. So I want to find a pawpaw near me. I can just zoom in on this map and see everybody's observations of pawpaws. I live up in the Northland, kind of by Parkville, but I can zoom all the way in and say, oh, look, here are all of these pawpaws with little pins on this map. And it turns out this one is really close to my house. I could walk there. So anyway, this is it's just so fun. iNaturalist is a really cool tool. I'm very excited for all of us to use it. And the final reason why it's cool is because it has you're generating real data that researchers actually use. So like I know ecologists who will like download data from iNaturalist and use it for their ecological research. So this type of thing where members of the public are submitting information for researchers to use. You'll hear it called citizen science. You'll hear it called community science sometimes. But it is just like a really cool opportunity that we can sort of help ecology advance while we're having fun in the woods. That's also the reason why you'll see some observations once they've been confirmed. You'll see them called research grade. So that means that they're eligible to be used by ecologists for research. Something else cool you'll see on iNaturalist, once you start poking around, you'll see we can comment on each other's observations in the project. Other people in the iNaturalist community can too, which sounds creepy, but is not. It's just super fun. It's all just plant nerds saying, hey, your plant is cool. People might ask questions about identification. You can ask questions, people will answer them. If you find something really cool, people might comment and say, way to go, that's really cool. It's just a really fun community of people who love nature, really. It's not just plants. One other thing I wanted to point out is this little annotations part. So there's a ton of information you can fill in that will help a ton of different types of research. So one of the things you can do is annotate each of your observations with the plant phenology, whether the plant was budding, flowering, fruiting, or none of the above when you saw it. That just adds one more layer so that if someone is researching phenology of plants or the timing of these seasonal events, then maybe your observation will be a data point for them. So I think that's all I have for you. We'll stop sharing. Maybe I will stop sharing. There it is. I couldn't find it.
I understand.
Yes. Okay.
We had one question,
Mhm.
and I'm curious too, because I've never even thought about it. Whether or not once someone uploads a photo to
Mhm.
iNaturalist as an
Mhm.
observation, can they then delete it from their phone? Would that be
Oh,
okay?
yes.
Is it permanently stored on
Yes.
iNaturalist?
Yes. Good question. Yes,
Yes.
it's
Okay.
permanently on iNaturalist.
Right. And then I did not talk about phenology when I was talking about doing these surveys. And
Mhm.
that was one of the reasons why we thought about going throughout the season is because, well,
Mhm.
one, if we're looking at the spring understory in a forest, which a lot of this is forested area, it looks totally different
Mhm.
because some of the spring flowers are ephemerals. They go away. We
Mhm.
don't see some of those trout lilies and things like that later
Right.
in the season. They're all gone. So those are some of the reasons why we will go throughout the season.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So woods are woods, everybody, there'll be ticks, there'll be whatever is in the woods with us.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's I've always enjoyed my forays into these woods. They're absolutely beautiful and I always find something new every time I go. Um, so let's see. I don't think we had any other questions, but anyone who would like, if you have any questions about joining or if you run into any trouble, please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you. Um, get logged in or whatever. And then when we go on our first foray in April, I think it's April 11th, we can work out any kinks that we have with iNaturalist while we're out there. Anna, I did notice that because I went and did a quick check on iNaturalist on my
Mhm.
iPhone, and I don't
Mhm.
have the two arrows that go back and forth.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
okay.
Did you do that?
You'll
And I
have
was
to
like,
show
oh,
me.
that's cool. How do you do that? So we'll compare notes. We'll
Mhm.
compare ways our phones are working. And make sure, we all can have fun doing this because I've used it to identify, like, for instance, Starry Campion. I had never seen Starry Campion or Silene stellata with just leaves. I'd
Mhm.
only in books and everything else seen the flower. So when I ran into the leaves, I was like, what the heck is that? And I didn't know. So I sent it to iNaturalist and looked at what the suggestions were and did a whole
Mhm.
bunch of comparing. And I looked at some range maps and I thought, you know what, that is Starry Campion, based on what I was seeing. So it's a great way to learn and really to kind of participate in helping people gather data about what is actually out here
Mhm.
still, in spite of all the human encroachment into these areas, we still have these things growing around us everywhere. So I'm really excited that we're going to go out and take a look at this place because it has so much to see throughout the season. So you'll love it just as much as me, and you'll start using iNaturalist, I'm sure, as soon as you as soon as you get a chance to be in any place, anything like this, and you'll start knowing what they are before you even take the pictures, I'm sure. Um, so I think, Anna, do you have anything else to share where we didn't quite make it all the way
I
to
don't
8 o'clock,
think
which means
so.
we talk fast.
If anybody's
Is
got any
anyone
more
planning
questions,
to, yeah, does anybody planning to join us? I'm hoping yes, on April 11th.
check that date.
I'm gonna be there for sure. So
I'm gonna be there. It
Anna's gonna
is
be
April
there.
11th. Confirmed April
Yes,
11th.
yes. It's gonna be good. We're
Okay.
gonna go in the evening after so that people can, so Patricia Witry says she's coming, which is good. Yay. Um, I think we're starting at what time is it? Is it at 6 or is it at 7?
I think it's 6. I'll
6.
check.
So we'll start at 6, I think, and let's see, I've got it on Zeffy.